My name is Justine Rosenthal. I am the editor of The National Interest, and I am lucky to be here today with Sam Tanenhaus, the editor of the New York Times Book Review section and the author of The Death of Conservatism, along with many other remarkable tomes. We are going to talk today about the future of the right wing, the conservative movement. So let me just start off with a big poll came out in the New York Times about the Tea Partiers, conservatives. What's going on with that? How do you interpret it? Are we about to see a split in the right wing?
Well, I don't know, Justine, if we'll see a split. I think what we'll see is the Tea Party group, which is the more ideologically conservative faction of the Republican Party, will begin to exert more control within it. I think it doesn't look like a third party movement so much as a very motivated faction that will push the Republican Party to the right. And that may actually be profitable for them in the upcoming elections. It'll make sure that nominees, Republican nominees, will be ideologically consistent. I don't know if in the long run it will pay off. You know, we look back at earlier times where there have been factional disputes like this. In the early 1960s, when the Goldwater movement emerged, that led ultimately to Ronald Reagan's presidency, Republicans paid a price for a long time. They lost badly in 1964, and that really led to the last large period of liberal hegemony. So something similar could happen today. I think it's a mistake to read too much into the broader impact that the Tea Party movement could have right now. It's an internal dispute.
And for those of us who are less tuned into the movements, what is the internal dispute? I mean, what is it that they're really battling over? I mean, it sounds in some ways like it is for the soul or the ideology of the GOP. What are the issues?
It's a fight, Justine, it's a fight against the establishment. This is what's happened before. In earlier periods, the Republican establishment was fairly liberal. Rockefeller Republicans or even Nixon Republicans were very connected with Wall Street, with the foreign policy hegemony, you know, the kind of internationalist wing of the Republican Party, which wasn't so different from the Democrats. Now we have a Republican Party that is fairly conservative ideologically. This is not a period of cross-party voting, of coalitions and compromises between the two parties. So it's really a war by one group of people on the right against other people on the right. The difference is those being waged war upon are those who've held power for a long time. And they get seduced, the argument would go, or intoxicated by all the trappings of power, and they become isolated, insulated from what the populist voices out in the heartland are saying, worried about. So it's really a kind of house cleaning, I think, on the right, but with not a great deal of ideological dispute.
So what are we supposed to make of the rise of Sarah Palin in all of this?
Well, Sarah Palin's so interesting because what the conservatives say is only the liberals care about her. That she's a liberal fixation. The liberals love to hate her, but the Republican Party doesn't take her seriously. I actually think Sarah Palin is more interesting than that she is one of the leading figures now in what's become a kind of cross-pollination between media and politics. That a figure like Glenn Beck, or in a smaller way Mike Huckabee, Rush Limbaugh, these are really entertainers who actually have some command or influence over conservative minds, conservative movements. Sarah Palin very cleverly maneuvers between the political realm and the media realm. You don't know whether she's a candidate for office or whether she wants a big talk show like Oprah's. And where our politics is now, and something that historians like Richard Hofstadter predicted more than half a century ago we would arrive at, is a place where media and politics are hard to untangle. So Palin exists in these two worlds where she motivates and excites. She can draw tremendous numbers of people to rallies, and those same people would say they wouldn't vote for her for president. So she's more of a kind of a driving force. She's someone big in the circus tent who attracts a big crowd, and that's what movements need. So she's an important figure, I think.
Now tell me, we always hear about that America is really a centrist nation, and that there's a big block of independents who can always be won and motivated in any election. As we're seeing the Obama administration legacy even start to take form, we're seeing it take shape, we see this rise of the Tea Party movement, some sort of argument within the GOP. What do you think is going to happen to these independents? Does it look like they're going to split off into the two parties? Are they going to remain independent? the demographics of that group and the ideological leanings of those groups? Is that going left or right?
I think it depends on the economy. I think something we overlook is just what the economic condition of the country is. Ronald Reagan elected pretty comfortably in 1980, drew a lot of Democratic votes, centrist votes. The economy looked bad in 1982, was bad, tremendous recession. Republicans were punished in midterm elections. Economy began to recover in 1984. Reagan sails in with a huge landslide victory. I think we're seeing something like that now, that where Obama himself is centrist is in his temperament. I think the politics are ideologically liberal. We know that. We know it better than we did when he was running for office. But he seems a reasonable man and a thoughtful and pragmatic one. And if his opponents don't seem that way, he will have an enormous advantage over them. If the economy improves to the point where the independent voter, whoever he or she is, feels less anxious, then I think Obama and the Democrats do pretty well. If they're unable to right the economy, or if the economy doesn't right itself under them, then there could be real setbacks for the Democrats. I don't think that the votes those people represent, the independent or centrist voters, will tilt definitively toward one party or the other. That's why they're where they are now, in the middle, because they're alienated from both parties, or in better times, marginally interested or possibly attracted to either party.
Now, does it matter who the Republicans put up as their presidential candidate?
Oh, it absolutely does. It's almost the most important decision they will make. If you look at polls now, you'll see if Obama is pitted against a generic Republican, he loses by a few points. Then you see who the actual Republicans are, and he wins by a lot. Something we saw in the New York Times poll is that the Tea Party group, who after all comprise at most 18% of the electorate, and only a quarter of them are activists. Now we're talking about 4 or 5% of the population, voting population, that in distinction with most of the rest of the country, they don't like Obama personally, but most of the country actually does. And even now, he's getting pretty good marks from the electorate at large for his personal qualities, for the way he comports himself, and even for the things he's trying to do as a leader. So he's not in so weak a position as you might think, unless the Republicans find someone who has just a fraction, really, of the dynamism he has. They could be in pretty poor shape. Remember, the Republican names we're seeing now are very familiar ones. Many of them are losers from the last go-round. So I don't think at this point that they have someone really strong. They will have to find that person, or the election will be much more difficult than it may look now.
So we will end on that note. It is Obama's to lose.